Okay, and here we go. So again, thanks everybody for joining us for our PALCUS FY webinar series today. We are super excited to be talking with Maria Lawton, the Azorean Green Bean, about traditional Portuguese Christmas recipes. And I will have to say that by far, we've had the most registrants for this webinar out of all the webinars we've ever had. So I think it goes to show the interest level of people in wanting to learn some traditional Portuguese recipes for Christmas and other holidays. So
Absolutely, I agree with that.
yeah, so thanks for your time. Just a little bit about our presenter. Maria is an author of a book, blogger, and foodie. She was born,
Blogging is okay.
yeah, there you go. She was born in São Miguel and currently lives in New Bedford. And you can follow her at AzoreanGreenbean.com. You can also find her books on Amazon.com, and she's also very well represented on social media with YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and Pinterest. And my goodness, woman, you are a busy girl maintaining all these channels.
I am a busy woman. I am a busy woman.
But it's great. You have some really great content then. So we're really excited and thankful to have you here today. Just a quick logistical item. All listeners are in listen-only mode. That's really just so that there's minimal background noise. If you do have a question, please send it in the chat module of the GoToWebinar console that should be on the right side of your screen. And I'll read out all the questions to Maria. And because we have so many people this time, if we don't get to all the questions, not to worry, Maria will get your questions via email, and then she can answer you directly. Or if you want to send us additional questions, you can send them to palcus@palcus.org. So with that, let's get started, Maria, and our first recipe is cavacas.
What? Oh, you know what? My screen is not showing anything right now, honey.
Oh, I did that whole thing, and I wasn't showing my screen.
It's okay. It's all right. We still love you. It's okay, honey.
You know, the best laid plans, right? Let me just go back.
Yeah, absolutely. It's okay.
I'm just going to go back real quick so everybody can see those beautiful slides that we had.
All the hard work you did.
I know. Okay, so here's today's webinar, and here's all about our lovely presenter, all of these websites. And also I should mention that a PDF of this presentation will be made available. So if you don't want to write down the links, you can just copy them from the PDF. And if you want to ask questions, here's what the console on the right side of your screen should look like if you want to ask a question. We already have our question, and it's probably somebody telling me, okay, we can see it too. Yes, thanks, Sherry. All right, so let's get started. Cavacas.
Well, you know, thanks for having me, Angela. I really appreciate it, hon. The thing we were talking about Christmas and for growing up, you know, Portuguese, what's on that table for Christmas Eve, and it varies. And we're going to have things here that some of you might say, we never had that. We had this instead. But this is just things that I know that my mom would have made and we would have had at that table. And, of course, there's some things that aren't here on these slides, and that is figs and dates and all of these other little things that would always be at the table. But cavacas, we're going to start with cavacas, and that was a dessert that was, you know, I'd always hear how difficult it was to make, but it's not. It's the easiest thing. The key is the beating of it. You have to whip it at high speed for a good long time, and it's all there on the recipe on my website. That link will take you right to my website. But it is light, it's airy, it's not sweet. The only sweetness is the topping on top of it, the sugar topping, and yeah, I think all of you.
Would you eat these plain, or would you eat them with something, Maria?
I love to eat it plain, and what I also love to do on the glaze, I like to put some lemon zest on it, and when I make the glaze, I make a little bit extra, so sometimes the glaze goes into, if they have openings or cracks or holes in the cavacas, it'll go in it, and it's perfect. For me, it's perfect, but you can put jam in it if you want to, but I like it plain, just like that. And we would have a nice tray of that on top of the table.
Okay. on to our next homemade lemon liqueur.
Well, I think all of us out there who will know that at that table you will always have liqueur. And the homemade liqueur is a specialty, and we all know we had that, and the table wouldn't be complete without it. So we know we can take any fruit and make it liqueur. Infuse that hooch, that homemade aguardente that your dad would probably have made after he made his wine, and my mom would take over, and it would be infusing the lemon rinds, as well as orange rinds, as well as mandarin or tangerine. I mean, you really can make liqueur out of anything, and we tend to try our best to do that. But it's delicious. I mean, and of course, anyone that comes into your home, the first thing you offer them at Christmas is a glass of liqueur or a shot of something really wonderful. So this is, again, homemade liqueur. You need a few weeks to have the rinds really take over, and the liqueur kind of like just suck out all that great stuff, the flavor and the color. So it's something that you can't make all of a sudden this week and have it ready for next week for Christmas, but you can make it year-round, hon. You can make it year-round.
Yeah, and this way people can maybe plan ahead for next year.
Absolutely. I usually do Christmas gifts for this.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah, I start right after, I should say right before Thanksgiving for us here in the United States, and I go to Whole Foods, or I make sure that it is organic citruses, so organic oranges, organic lemons, because when you're pulling all that out into the to the alcohol, you want it to be without any preservatives, without any additives, without any chemicals, without anything. So, but I start then, and by the time it's ready, I have it all in bottles and packaged, and people love it. They want it every year. So it's a great gift.
That's awesome. You may have to start your own line of liqueurs.
I might have to. The green bean line.
All right, this is one of my favorites that I'm excited to try.
Oh my God, Angela. All right, so this is the scoop. We all love Blanche Maria. When we're babies, we're given that right off the bat, and we mash it up for our babies with bananas, and then when we're very old and gray and all that, we're still enjoying it because it dissolves really well in our mouth. We don't have to chew it if we don't have any teeth. So it's the type of thing where we just substitute sometimes things that are used with graham crackers, or I will be honest with you. This recipe came from my cousin Daniela, and my mom would make this chocolate cream and all of that stuff, but the crust, sometimes she would use the Blanche Maria, sometimes she would use the graham cracker crust, and because it was just one of those things. Well, my cousin Daniela goes, oh no, anytime I see a recipe that has anything of another crust or another thing, I make it with Blanche Maria. And I'm thinking, oh my God, do you know how many recipes are out there?
Yeah.
That if we put Blanche Maria as the crust base, how amazing that would be, and it just brings it up to a whole other level.
Yeah.
So this pie was that, and this chocolate tort, I should say, because it is a tart, is in my second book. So it's the book I'm working on right now. So all of you are privy to this recipe before it gets published in the book, but it's so worth it. It's delicious. I hope all of you get to try that.
Yeah, we can start to Blanche Maria-fy a lot of different recipes.
Oh, absolutely. And you have carte blanche on that. You should be able to do that. I think all of us know what we're talking about. We love that cookie, and it's funny how people say, well, I don't know what a Maria biscuit is. What is that? And I'm thinking, okay, you're not Portuguese, because if you were Portuguese, you would know what a Blanche Maria is.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I try to say, well, it's comparable with an arrowroot or a tea biscuit, an English tea biscuit, but we all know that Blanche Maria is.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. All right, these I love, and I'm excited to hear your recipe on this one.
Oh my God! So roasted chestnuts. Okay. You know, we were having this conversation not too long ago, and we were talking about how there are so many ways to make or cook chestnuts. And I always love to hear people telling me how they make their, roast their chestnuts or cook their chestnuts. Now, personally, I love chestnuts. It's something that my dad would do at the home because it was my mom, my dad, me, and my two sisters did not care for chestnuts. Maybe they were adopted, I don't know. But they did not like chestnuts. So, needless to say, it was my dad who did it, and I always watched my dad do it. And I would be the one going with him to the store, and he taught me how to pick out chestnuts. And you don't go in with that scoop and pick them out and put them in a bag. You go in and you pick it out one by one. And that's exactly how, I still do it to this day. And that is, if you see little pricks on the chestnut, you know that maybe bugs have burrowed into the chestnut. If you might see mold on the chestnut, you don't want that. It has to be a smooth surface, not bumpy. If it's gone bumpy, it's gone old, and you don't want to use that. So there's all these like little things about a chestnut that it's not just buying a chestnut. But the way my dad did it, and I know some of you, I've heard microwave it, I heard some of you boil it only, I heard some of you just roast it only. Well, for me, I should say my dad, it was a combination. And that was he would, cut them, like any of them, any steps, you always have to cut it because you don't want to cook it and have it explode on you. And then he would boil it for like 5-10 minutes tops. And then he would take it and put it in a cast iron skillet, and that's the picture I have here. I just did that a few weeks ago, as a matter of fact, and put salt on it. And I apologize. He would also put salt in the water too when he boiled it. And you would put the coarse kosher salt at the bottom of the pan, and you would take those chestnuts that you've just boiled and you toss them in that pan, and all of a sudden the salt would kind of adhere to the chestnuts, and then you roast it for another 10-15 minutes, and that's all. And it's not mushy as boiled, it's not too hard and dry as if just roasting. It's a wonderful combination, and I absolutely stand by it. It's a combination for me that makes it perfect.
Yeah,
and I do as soon as I can. I'm sorry, Angela.
Oh no, sorry. I thought you were done. I was just going to say the tips on how to pick out the chestnuts are really helpful, and then also the fact that you do both boiling and roasting to get that right balance. It's a really great idea. I've only done them boiling or in the crock water, so yeah, I'll try it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, once you do that, you'll go, oh my God, Maria, you're right. Your dad was right.
As they usually are, right?
They really are. Yeah, right. They really are.
Okay, so Massa.
Oh, okay. Well, we know that at every table for any special occasion, it won't be complete unless you have sweetbread on it. And I made sure I wrote this down, and that's for all of you who make sweetbread or have tried making sweetbread and it hasn't come out well. And my thing is, don't give up. Please don't give up. The thing with me, sweetbread was the hardest for me to learn. It took more tries and it took more failures than anything I've ever made. And what was funny in all this is I never gave up. I knew what was going to happen. But I'm really good at baking bread. And so I kept thinking, it's sweetbread, it's bread. It should be the same consistency in the dough. So when the dough was wet, I kept adding flour to it. And so it would make it a dense, it wouldn't rise as nice, it wouldn't be as fluffy inside. It wasn't what my mom would make until, I explained it to my aunt how, I'm just aggravated, this is what's going on, I haven't given up, and da-da-da. And she was like, it's because you're adding more flour. It's a wet dough. So for those of you that know how to bake bread but are struggling with sweetbread, that was the light bulb that went off, and I went, oh my God, I've been screwing myself. I've been doing this to myself and putting more flour and just ruining the recipe. So it is on the wet side. resist the urge to add more flour. And the recipe here I have is a good friend of mine, and her mom makes, wonderful sweetbread. And her steps are very easy to follow and are very simple, and it's very delicious. And when I shared that on my Facebook page, I had so many people make it and then sent me pictures of the completed sweetbreads, and they were all saying, "Oh my God, this is wonderful. This is just like my mom," and I love it. I love it. So don't give up, ladies or gentlemen. You can do it. Just hang in there and do not resist that urge to add extra flour.
I think this is one of those recipes where it seems like it would be simple, but it is kind of intimidating. So maybe, I know I haven't tried to make it, but I think now I will, given this recipe you have here. All right.
And I had oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You had an aunt? Go ahead.
No, I was going to say I also had an older. See, I try to get hints from like all kinds of everybody I can get a hold of, and and I stop people in supermarkets and I ask them, and it's I don't even want to go into detail, but and one little old lady who was so cute was at the Portuguese market, and I was buying some flour, and we were talking about sweetbread, and she goes, "Oh no, I buy the, what is it, 3 roses, 5 roses that comes from Canada, because it's 5.5 pounds, and it's just the right amount of flour that's, perfect to make sweetbread. So don't use the, 5 pounds of regular, American flour. You want, Canadian flour." So for those out there, and you can get your hand on the 3 roses or 5 roses or whatever from flour from Canada, try that, because
whatever works,
It works. I mean, whatever works, guys. Whatever works.
All right, another one of my favorites,
malasadas. Malasadas. Malasadas, to be honest with you, was only served in my home, and it was about 3 times a year. It was a special treat, and in my book, I have 2 recipes. I have this recipe here that I share on my website, and then I have another one in my book that's my Aunt Inez. This one is from my Aunt Lalia, and they're both wonderful. They're both light and they're airy, and they have that hint of lemon. It's just, but we had it. It was the Tuesday before Ash Wednesday, Easter, if that, and Christmas. Those were the 3 times of the year. It wasn't, every Saturday going to the bakery and buying a malasada. It was literally 3 times a year. So to me, malasadas is just a very special treat for me. And since I've posted this recipe, I've had a few people, which I love when people make the recipe and then other people give hints, so that, what I love about the community of Green Bean, Azorean Green Bean, is that we kind of have a really great group of people. There's all these women and men that are part of it, that some of them I've met through book signing and my book signing tour up in Canada. I met so many wonderful, beautiful people, and they all feel like it's their place too, and which is a wonderful thing. And they come back and say, "Maria, I tried it, but I tried it this way, and how about if you tweak it like this? It comes out better." And I love that. And a couple of them that came back and I share with everybody is, instead of using milk to dip my hands in the dough, which my mom would do, she suggested using oil, cooking oil. And it works. It's so much better than the milk, hands down. And then from another person, they said, let the dough rise in the oven with the door closed and the light on. Because you're always afraid of drafts, you're always afraid of all of these things, and by doing that, you don't worry about the drafts, and it gives that little heat from the lamp. It was like, oh my God, that's perfect. It's just like little suggestions to make it easier. But it's a wonderful dessert, and it's wonderful to have something at the table there for Christmas. So, yeah, wonderful memories.
It's one of those, I think we had this conversation earlier as well, that a lot of these foods may not be categorized just as Christmas, because we tend to have sort of those Portuguese staples at all of the holidays, right? So
Absolutely.
the malasadas, the sweet rice, which I think we're going to talk about here in the next slide.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so there's definitely some common themes here, and I think
And
foods
the
that
other
we're very familiar with, which is great.
right. And the other thing with malasadas is, like we said before, everybody calls it a little different
Different,
depending
yeah.
on what island you're from, if you're in the mainland, and depending on where you live.
Mhm.
And I have, filush, because I know that's in some of the islands as well as the mainland, that's what they call it.
Mhm.
I know in St. Michael it's malasadas, in other islands it's malasadas. And then, of course, depending on where it is, it's Portuguese donuts, which, okay. Fried dough, yeah, but not even close, so much better, but some people call that.
Yeah.
And then beaver tails, they call that in Canada. They call it beaver tails. So that was new to me. I never had heard that before. But yeah, so no matter what, it's what you call it. I don't care what you call it. It's delicious.
Yeah.
That we can all agree on.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, here in California, we pretty much refer to them as filhos. And the pronunciation is different, right? Depending on what word you use. And then if you go to Hawaii, their malasadas are very different.
Yes.
So that's a whole other conversation about how we've...
That's a whole other podcast. That's a whole other thing.
All right. Go ahead.
Good. I added that in there for the simple fact that there would always be biscuit in my home. No matter when, no matter where. I had no cookies in my cookie jar. It was filled with biscuits. And we talked about the different designs of biscuits. My mom would make it this way, where you'd roll it out and make a circle like a wreath or whatever, and sometimes she wouldn't have the patience to do that, and she would just make little balls of it, and that's fine too. And I know we talked about having it twisted so it's almost like a ribbon.
Yep.
It really does not matter how the design. You can use your creative juices to do whatever kind of design, but this biscuit recipe is biscuits made with heavy cream, and that was always one of my favorites. And you would have that at Christmas. You would have that all the time, because you would have that in the afternoon with some tea, or you'd have it before you go to bed with some tea, or if you didn't want to feel like having something too sweet, you'd have a biscuit with your coffee at night. So it's something that's just always there. And it still is to this day.
Yeah, and speaking of tea, just a total side note, something that I learned from you was that the English got their tea tradition from the Portuguese. So I love that, and so this is a perfect complement to that.
Darn right. You're darn right. It was Queen Catherine, who was married off to King Charles in England, and with it went a big trunk of tea, as well as for a wedding gift, they were given the tea root to India. That came from Portugal as a wedding gift. And when the Queen came into the court, she introduced afternoon tea time. And that tradition stuck on. But it was brought on, that tradition came from a Portuguese queen. So for all of us who are Portuguese, we can say to our English friends, you can thank us for tea time.
Absolutely, because people think of it as very much an English tradition, but little do they know. Yep.
Uh-huh.
Excellent.
And who has the only tea plantation in all of Europe?
Oh, the Azores, yeah.
That's right. That's a whole other time. That's a whole other time.
Another podcast.
Another podcast.
Okay, sweet rice.
Sweet rice. Oh my God. Well, that's my favorite one. It's my favorite dessert of all time. I think everyone knows that by now. Anyone who follows me on Facebook knows that sweet rice is my favorite of all time. I'm like the connoisseur of sweet rice. Whoever has sweet rice, I have to go straight to it and taste it and see how it's made, if I like it, how I've got to get the whole thing down. And in my book, I don't have one recipe, I have three. Because I love them all three. They're all three different consistencies. Some people like it, like my dad, where you can cut it and hold it in your hand. No word of a lie. It's that, that dense. And then my cousin Loriana, it's a little bit softer and a little bit creamier, but not too creamy. And then it's my Aunt Lalia's recipe, which is the creamiest by far. And, there's a stick of butter in it. There's more milk. It's so decadent. And that, like I said, by far it is the creamiest. It's the most delicious. And so, yeah, this is the recipe I share with everyone here. And that is my Aunt Lalia's.
You have another good tip here at the end about not just putting the egg yolks into the rice, or else you'll get scrambled eggs. So,
well, it's a science that you learn by going, oh my God, I have cooked egg in my rice pudding. So, and so I try to make it so that all of you won't have to go through the same mistakes I had to go through. And it's a simple step, but no one ever talks about it when they give you the recipe. They just tell you, and you add the eggs, and you go, okay, you add the eggs. And then you add it, and you go, what the heck did I just do? So you have to temper it. You have to temper your eggs. In the same way when you make kanja and you add your eggs, your egg yolks in it, it's the same thing. And that is you take, a nice amount of, a nice little bowl amount of the rice pudding. You add the eggs to that. And then you take that bowl that's been tempered with the egg and you add that into the pan. Because that way it'll, again, it'll make it creamier and it'll add color. Those are the only two reasons to add the eggs in it.
Got it.
For those people that went, I really don't want to add the egg, fine. It'll just be a lighter color on your pudding, on your rice pudding. And it won't be as creamy. But if that's not what you wanted to begin with, that works out fine. There's no right or wrong. There's no right or wrong.
I think that's such a big thing, and it could be with all types of ethnic cooking, but especially with Portuguese, because everybody has their own version of things, right? And so sometimes you'll make something and someone will say, well, you didn't make it the right way. But to your point, it's not that it was right or wrong. That's just how I prefer it. So,
and not only that, but we know that from Portuguese cooking, it's different from the islands, the Azorean Islands. They cook different from the mainland. In the islands, island to island, they cook different, as well as village, sometimes to village in each island, they cook differently. And, with techniques and spices and all of that stuff. Then you go to the mainland and you have your sea coast and you have the ones that are up in the mountains. Those are two different ways of cooking, the spices and all of that. And then you don't even want to go into Brazil. That's a whole other Portuguese way of cooking. And then you've got macanese, which is Macau, Portuguese cooking in China. And then you've got Goa in India that they still speak Portuguese and cook, with our spices and all the things that we brought into Portugal. Portuguese is the original cooking. I'm sorry?
So we can't forget Madeira.
Oh, and Madeira. I'm sorry. Yes, you're right. I'm sorry for those that are from Madeira. I'm sorry. You are correct. It's a whole archipelago of islands there too.
Yeah.
And the thing is the Portuguese were the original fusion cooking.
I like that.
We were doing spices from all different places and introducing, and we introduced tempura. We did all the spicing, the curry, and all of that. What is it? We say vinagre. Well, that's the same way that they do in India, but they call it a different. It's like a different twist. But they cook the vinagre. It's the same way. We are the most amazing nationality, and we really have to be proud of who we are and what we've introduced to the world. And we were discoverers. We were these amazing, brave people, and who traveled the world and brought ourselves to different places. And it's just, that's a whole other podcast, Angela. I'm sorry. But yeah, I think we were truly the first fusion cooking. And anytime I hear someone saying, oh, farm to table, I'm like, big deal. That's what I grew up with.
Right, exactly.
Farm to table is nothing new. You
Yeah,
know?
we were eating organic before it had a name, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Kale. Oh yeah. Uh-huh. Thank you. Welcome to my world. We've been eating kale for a long time.
Right.
It's just all of these things that we really are just wonderful.
I totally agree. Um,
Oh,
so we have a few other Christmas recipes here that they're not from
yes,
your
yes,
website, but from our friends at other places that people might
yes.
think of when they think of Portuguese Christmas foods.
Yeah, well, I love David, and I'm so glad we were able to share some of his recipes here because my mom would, it was very rare she would make a boule de riz. That would be something that, first of all, my dad did not care for crystallized fruit, so that would tend to be something she would not make, but she would buy. And there's the difference. She would go to the bakery or have someone that she knew that would make it and have it. So I didn't want to say, oh, this is the recipe of my mom because I don't have one. My mom would not make it. What she would make instead, and I found it in what we call the boule de natal, and this one it's a very regional one where this is the ones that you would make and you would have. It's our fruitcake, our Christmas fruitcake. But instead of the crystallized fruit that's in that recipe, and that one comes as close to my mom as ever, she would substitute the crystallized fruit for dates, for figs, in addition to the golden raisins and the regular raisins. So, and omitted the crystallized fruit because that was again, not a liked thing at my home. And the sunj, that again, that's something she would make malasadas. She wouldn't make sunj. And last is also rabadas, which is some people call it rabadas, some people call it fatias douradas, and the golden slices. And that's what my mom would call it. Would be fatias douradas. And I think I explained it to someone the other day. It's we deep fry ours. We use day-old bread and we dredge it in a mixture of the eggs with sugar and, sometimes she would throw a little bit of vanilla in there. Sometimes she would put cinnamon in there. And then she would deep fry it and then dredge it through the sugar or sometimes cinnamon. So, but everyone makes it a little different again, but it's all wonderful things that would be at that table.
Just a reminder to our listeners, you can submit a question anytime. You don't have to wait till the end. So, and we're doing well on time. We're only at about 8:33, so we have a good,
I know.
25.
It's funny. We're going to be honest here. We were talking about this, and Angela and I were talking, and we went through what we wanted to say, and no word of a lie, we were talking for almost 2 hours.
Yeah.
And so we said, oh my God, I can't do this. I can't talk for 2 hours. We only have an hour's time. So I tried going as fast as I could in describing different things, and now we've got plenty of time.
Right.
So, but that's okay. That's all right. I think this time of year is very close to all our hearts. It's a time when, for some people, it's very difficult because they've lost their loved ones.
Mm-hmm.
And so traditions are very important, and especially food traditions,
Mm-hmm.
because our strongest memories that we have is food memories. And so then when we have Christmas and that table is set up, or we're cooking, or we're baking, and we're making all of these wonderful dishes, the thought goes back to when you were a child, when you were growing up, when your mom would make that, when your grandmother would make it. What else was on that table? There was codfish on that table. That's a whole other thing. I mean, we're talking about sweets that are on that table, but we know that we'd have codfish. And I know some people use the codfish agumos de sa, other ones use the different layers of boiling codfish with potatoes and the egg and having that there on the table. My mom would fry up codfish cakes, the tortas. And so that was something where, again, she would make that, or sometimes she would make the little balls of the croquettes of codfish, and we'd have that to just like pop in our mouth. And I love it with a squeeze of lemon over it. That just always is a wonderful thing, whereas my dad would always want a little hot sauce next to the side to make it even spicier. You know, just all of those wonderful memories that come from that table. And you know, you'd have lupini beans, you'd have tomos on top of that table also. You know, you'd have your wine. For my home, it would be my dad's homemade wine, because my dad was very proud of his homemade wine. He would make it every year. And every year he would have his new vintage, and he made sure that everybody, you know, who would come in would have it. And besides the liqueur, and you know, there was the midnight mass that would go with it, or missa do galo, that we'd call it. And you'd come back home and you'd have all of that set up, and you know, and it's hard to explain to non-Portuguese people that we celebrate our Christmas Eve.
Right.
You know, it's all of that was, you know, going to Christmas Mass, getting everything cooked and ready so that when we'd come back home, everything would be on that table. That was number one. And so we'd go to midnight Mass, we'd come back, we'd have all of the food there to celebrate. We'd open gifts. Sometimes before we'd open gifts, we would have people at our door singing, playing music, and they're going house to house, or family to family, friends to friends, and you know, asking for that shot of liqueur, homemade liqueur. And it was just a really wonderful, wonderful time that I think now those things aren't as done as much here in the United States. I think I know it's still done in Portugal. I know it's still done in Portugal, as well as the Azores. I know it's done. But around here, that time is like we don't do that anymore. You know, it's.
In fact, I think in our previous conversation, I was saying that you know, the first time I ever went door to door singing the Christmas carols for Christmas time was in Portugal, because here in California, we're really spread out. So to go door to door, you actually have to drive door to door.
Right.
So we never did that, at least not in the community I grew up. There could be other communities in other cities where they've done it, but yeah, we're just so much more spread out over here that I think some of those small village traditions, they went away as soon as you came.
They did. And I have two older sisters, and both Isabel and Adeline married two brothers. So yeah, it's kind of so the family. My brother-in-law's family is a huge part of my family, because they've always been part of my family. Right. My sisters are married to the same, you know what I mean, the same family. They're not only sisters, they're also sister-in-laws to each, you know what I mean, to all of the other, it's kind of, but, so my nieces and nephews are as close to being cousins as well as, you know, as close to siblings as you could ever be. But their family was from Puvação, which is in St. Michael. And let me tell you, they put my family to shame when it came to partying. They did, and I loved every minute of it, because José would have a guitar, Frank would have an accordion, their mom would have, a little tambourine. It was just so much fun. And because here in New England, we all kind of immigrated into, whether you're in New Bedford and you're within this certain South End, North End kind of thing, you stayed in clusters.
Right.
As well as in Fall River, again, there's clusters of us. And so all our family and friends were just a block here, a block there, a block here, a block there. So it was literally, let's go. Mm-hmm. And it was going door to door, and you'd say, Ninja Zujanisha, and they would go, yes, it would be, and they'd give you a drink, and and this isn't me in my teenage years. I'm going in and having shots,
Yeah.
It's just I'm like, oh my God, just, it was so much fun. It was just so much
Good
fun.
memories. So we do have a question.
Okay.
Someone says they loved the little custard pies while they were in Horta, and there are different recipes all around. What is your recipe? So I'm thinking maybe queijadas or the pastéis nata, maybe?
It would be the pastéis de nata
Okay.
because, and what would happen, I know my aunt, that'll be a book too, hon, that'll be a book too. My Aunt Claudia makes, instead of doing the little queijada, she does it in a tart. And it is just simply delicious. And she also has 2 recipes for the custard tarts, for not the filling, but the outside crust.
Oh,
And depending on where you go for it, it could either be a flaky, like phyllo dough kind of consistency, puff, not phyllo, more puff pastry, I'm sorry,
yeah.
versus a almost like a pie dough, but it's not, it's a little thinner,
Yeah.
but it's a little bit more. So there's the 2 different pie doughs, and I have recipes to make both. But I'll be very honest with you, I have the recipe for it, but when I've experimented in making it, I use the store-bought, you know. I'm going to be very honest here, because I can make the puff pastry from scratch, but it is very time-consuming. And if you want to do that, absolutely. But Pillsbury, as well as another brand that I love, makes amazing puff pastry. And the key on the pastry, the shell, is you take that sheet of pie pastry, I'm sorry, of puff pastry, and you roll it. You just roll it all together. And once you roll it, now you're going to cut slices of it. And those little slices, you're going to work it to form and go into that, to the cupcake tin. And by doing that, your pastry on that queijada de nata is going to be so much flakier than you would by just cutting it and putting it in the, in the pan and stuff.
Right.
That's the key. The key is that rolling that puff pastry for the base of it, and then cutting it and then working it together and putting it into the pan itself. But the inside, there's different versions. Some people put lemon in it, some people put vanilla in it, some people don't put any of that in it. There's a little bit of everything. And they're right. In Horta, they would make it differently than they would make it in St. Michael, as well as, the ones in the mainland, which is all in itself a whole different thing. I mean, people say, oh, it's like, queijadas de Belém. No, it isn't.
No, yeah.
No.
Different.
No, they're different. They have their own, which is amazing. It's a secret recipe. You can try to replicate it, but you can't even touch it. You can't.
So we have another question. When in Horta, we had a pastry made with beans. They were delicious. Do you have a recipe?
Oh, I do. That's book 2. I have my bean cards. And you know what? And this is funny because when I did book 1, I did like all of the things that I wanted my daughters to remember, the ones that, things that I didn't want to forget, make sure, because, again, I wrote the book for my 3 daughters and my nieces and nephews, not to ever forget, and to remember things that my mom and, my family did and all that. But it wasn't complete, and I knew there would be a second book. And so the second book, I thought, I'm going to do desserts, because, there's so many desserts, because every recipe that I have like 4 or 5 desserts, and we all have a sweet tooth. I have to say that. I think for anything, we always at the very end, it doesn't have to be like, oh my God, a truckload of sweets, but we like to have that little sweetness, that little treat at the end. And so I thought I was going to do that. But then I get so many other people requesting, going, oh, you didn't put your octopus recipe in there. We want our yeah, I need to put octopus in there. And in the meantime, I've made this wonderful roasted octopus that's like amazing. And the same thing with the bean tarts. And there's I have a couple of recipes for bean tarts, and one of them is with a base that's almost like a pie, but it's not. It's like a pie dough, but it's very thin crust on it, as well as one that doesn't have a crust. And some people like to use the red beans, so it almost like a brownish color. And some people like to use the white beans, which that was my mom's favorite. She liked the white beans, and it would make it almost, and it would caramelize on the top.
Wow.
It's delicious. But that's in the second book, folks. I'm sorry. I don't have it now. It's in the second book. I share a lot of things that are coming out from the second book, but you know, not everything, guys.
Yeah, yeah. No worries. We'll just have to do more webinars with more recipes. We do have a few more slides, and this one, I know we talked a lot about tradition, so it's not a food tradition, but certainly a Christmas tradition. Oops. Go ahead, sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
I'm going to try and mute myself, and you can go ahead and talk about the present.
Okay. Well, you know, guys, for me, growing up, as with, like I said before, you know, Christmas was huge in my family, you know, and my parents loved to decorate, and especially my mom. My dad would, you know, bring in these huge branches from trees, moss from outside, and they would make this elaborate presep. And it's something that I always admired. I would spend hours looking at it as a child and imagining the village and imagining all the scenery that they would put together. So it was always very, you know, theatrical, let's put it that way, for us to look at that and to see it and create our own little version of what the village would look like around the manger. And so when my parents passed, you know, I was the one who, from my sisters, who inherited my mom's presep, and because it really was my mom's presep. She loved every little figurine and would know where it came from and all of that stuff. And now I have it, and it's a tradition that I carry on every year. I set it up for my daughters who've been raised, you know, with this, and they make sure that every year I have it set up because they ask for it. They want to have it there, and you know, it's something that I know my parents, like I said, my parents would love knowing that tradition continues, and that one day when I'm gone, you know, my daughters will continue with that. And it's just, you know, it's a tradition that still goes on in the Azores in Portugal, and it's something that, again, we can't forget about that. It's something that we need to hold on and pass on. So it's really important. You know, I just every year now that my family in Portugal knows that I have this, every year I get a piece or two added on as gifts from them.
Oh, that's cool.
And last year I received the windmill. That was my gift last year, was the windmill.
That's awesome.
And it was like, oh my God, okay, I've got a windmill, but I know I had someone that had a fish at the end who was fishing, so I had to get a little mirror and make it so that it's, you know, looks like the water reflecting and the fish coming out of it, and then stones, and you know, so I'm not as elaborate as my mom and dad would be, but I really try to do it.
Well, I always wondered how people collect or amass all of the different figurines, because you can't just go out and buy a full set like that, right? You can buy the nativity scene, but the whole village and all the other little figurines, I always wondered, how long does it take to pull all that together? And some people hand make them. You have a couple of people here in California that they're known for their presépus that take up almost a whole room. And
that's exactly how my mom and dad would have been. And when it was in St. Michael, it was the dining room. It was the whole wall, and it came out of that. And it was 3 live trees, and it was,
wow.
You know, it was huge. It was a huge production. And so when we immigrated over here, my mom was only able to bring so much of it with her. So the pieces that she had were her favorite pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And so it means a lot to me knowing that those were her favorite pieces. You know?
Sure.
And when we, my cousin, especially my cousin Drummondwell, and his family, they do it still, where it's a whole room. It's a whole room. It's just beautiful. It's beautiful. And they have they have running water.
Oh
Like,
my
what?
gosh.
You know, it's like running water. It's like a little fountain and stuff. I'm like, what? It's crazy. It's really elaborate stuff. Really elaborate. I'm happy with my present. I am very happy with it.
Good, good. Well, I'm glad that we have some pictures of it to share. Well, maybe it'll inspire some of us to expand on our nativity scenes and start to do a full display.
That's right.
Our final slide here is about your new PBS series that you're working on, which we're really excited about because I know it's not going to be just in Rhode Island. It's actually going to be syndicated nationally, so we all get to enjoy.
Absolutely. It's working with PBS Rhode Island is just been great. They saw that there is no Portuguese food on PBS. Period. There's no representation of our food, and so they asked me to do a pilot for them. So with friends of mine, we went to St. Michael and filmed there, as well as we used a test kitchen here in the town of Dartmouth, and we, filmed this amazing pilot, a 30-minute pilot, and gave it to PBS Rhode Island, and they saw it and they loved it. And it's really wonderful to have people go, oh my God, that was beautiful. The scenery where was that? That's in St. Michael. Oh my God, that's so beautiful, and this is how it's made, and our food, and this and that, and they gave me a letter of intent, which is saying you film and you create 12 more shows, and we will air it. And now, because it is PBS and it's a nonprofit, this isn't the Food Network or a cooking channel, you've got to look for the sponsors. You've got to look for underwriters to pay for the filming, the editing. Maria Lawton does not get paid. This is all money for to air it, to film it, and to edit it, and it's a lot of money to do that. So right now we're looking for underwriters and sponsors to make that happen. And so if there's companies, organizations that are out there that are hearing this and they want to be part of it and be on that list of, this series is brought to you and made possible because of people like, and thanks to, have their name on that. That would be a wonderful thing if they're able to do that.
Well, sure.
So yeah, so we're looking for sponsors and underwriters. So if everyone tells two friends and two friends tell two friends, and it continues, this could be done next year. And I see it happening. I see PBS having a Portuguese food cooking series on. Its time is due. We really have not shown who we are out there in the cooking world, and I think it's time. The time has come, and I really do. And the other thing I know that Angela and I were talking about is doing other things out there and getting the word out about Portuguese food and being Portuguese. And there's so many of us, but we tend to be, we acclimated very well into our surroundings, and we came in and we held on to some traditions with family, but we also acclimated, and we didn't put our food in the forefront. I know my parents, my mom was the most amazing cook, but my dad would rather eat at home and have my mom's cooking than go into a restaurant.
Yeah.
It was the type of thing where, it's our food. Of course it's wonderful.
Right.
But, and when I do go to certain Portuguese restaurants, there's some that are spot on and they're wonderful. And then there's some that you go, well, okay, they've Americanized it. So it's important to kind of show who we are and what our food is made of.
Right. No, I absolutely agree. And going back to the sponsors, if a linguiça sponsor, food sponsor, olive oil sponsor, that's a perfect way to get their product to be used on the show also, right? So
Yeah.
it's
And
not
at least to be, to notify who, this is, it brought to you by, such as a sausage company. Oh, which sausage company is that? Kind of thing.
right.
No, PBS does not allow certain commercials. You can't really do commercials per se
Mhm.
because it's a nonprofit. It's all, once someone wants to be a sponsor or wants to be an underwriter, it has to go through PBS for them to approve it.
Mhm.
There's a whole series to it, but it's because it's a public broadcasting system.
Right.
And there's some rules and regulations that need to go by, but we need to make it happen, folks. We
Sure.
need to make it happen.
I agree. So we are at 4 minutes to the hour, so we did a great job of sticking to our hour. And we have
Yay!
one final question, which is, when will your new book be released?
Oh my God! So I was just telling Angela, I'm going into New York next month, and in talking to some some people, but I'm hoping it's next year. I'm hoping it's next year. Yeah. As soon as I have that, I will absolutely let you know. But it'll be, I'm hoping next year. Let's keep our fingers crossed for next year.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, and it's going to be in a continuation of book one, where it's going to be a lot more recipes and a lot more desserts. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's almost like the missing piece to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third can be just desserts. And maybe the fourth can be a little bit about every island. Or maybe the third will be about all the recipes from the different islands, including Madeira and going into the continent and all of that. So, I'm going to keep writing. I'm going to keep writing.
That's awesome.
I'm just going to keep writing, and I'm going to keep sharing. And I think the more of us share and with each other, the more we know it will continue.
Mm-hmm.
It won't be lost in translation, as well as with someone passing with this amazing recipe that they never shared with their family. I mean, and they took it to their grave. I mean, how good is that? Really?
Right.
Let's share with each other.
Exactly.
We need to do that. Yes, I know you make the most amazing bacalhau com natas, but you know what? It would be wonderful to give it to your daughter.
Sure. Yep.
Or give it to your niece or your cousin, or pass it on. I mean, You can't take it with you, guys. You can't take it with you. You got to pass it on. You got to if you want to keep it within family, keep it within family. But you got to share it. You got to share it with family, because once you go, that's it.
Yep.
That's it.
Agreed.
And it goes with you.
Agreed. And with that, we are at the top of the hour. Thank you again, Maria. This has been so awesome, and I think that we are going to be doing a lot more with you, because there's so much to be talked about and so many recipes to share. So this is just the first of many for us. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Our pleasure. All webinars through this series are posted on our website, and you can go and view them anytime. They're also on YouTube. We have our own YouTube channel. And also on the website, PDFs of all presentations are posted, so you can always download the PowerPoint and look at it that way if you didn't want to watch the video. But please consider this a resource to share with your family and friends, and you can watch anytime. And with that, we thank you for your time. Thank you for attending, and hope to see you on the next webinar. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Maria.
Thank you, Han. Talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.